The HOA president of my neighborhood drove her SUV through my 8-year-old son's lemonade stand and then tried to have me arrested for attacking her car. When that did not work, she deleted the security footage, buried us in bogus fines, sent a tow truck to grab my truck with my kids still inside, and even weaponized Child Protective Services against our family. She really thought a stack of bylaws and a plastic nameplate made her untouchable until the night I put her crimes on a giant screen in front of the whole neighborhood and watched the cops lead her out in handcuffs. My name is Jim Pard, and for a long time I honestly thought Granderson Estates was just a regular, nice suburban neighborhood. Cookie-cutter houses, perfect lawns, dads pretending to care about fertilizer brands, kids on scooters, you know the vibe. On paper, the HOA was there to keep things tidy. In reality, it was a little kingdom, and the queen was a woman named Karen Tanner, who treated the bylaws like holy scripture and the rest of us like unruly peasants. Karen ran the HOA with a clipboard in one hand and a permanent frown in the other. She had this spotless white SUV, a yard so perfect it looked photoshopped, and a teenage son named Brad who walked around like the sidewalks had his last name on them. My wife Tina and I used to call them the Tanner regime when we were feeling petty. It was just a joke at first, until my 8-year-old did something unforgivable in Karen's world. He told her son no. Our son Kelvin is this mix of Tina's brains and my stubborn streak, which is a terrifying and incredible combination. That summer he decided he wanted to run a lemonade stand. Not for a school project, not because of a TikTok trend, just because in his head that was what kids do in the summer. So one hot July afternoon we set up a little folding table at the end of our driveway. Tina helped him paint a sign in crooked letters. Kelvin's Lemonade, 50 cents, jokes are free. He climbed up onto this tiny folding stool in a superhero t-shirt chest, puffed out like he just opened a Fortune 500 company, and I stood back in the garage pretending to organize tools while I just watched him stupid proud. And honestly, it was perfect at first. Neighbors stopped by, handed him $1, told him to keep the change, laughed at his awful knock-knock jokes. Knock knock. Who's there? Lettuce. Lettuce who? Let us in, it's too hot out here. People would laugh even when the joke bombed because you cannot say no to a sweaty 8-year-old with lemonade. It felt like one of those memories you bottle up for the rough days. And then the storm front named Brad showed up. Brad walked up with 2 friends, all lanky limbs and attitude. He looked at the stand, then at Kelvin like he was offended by the existence of both. Kelvin, ever the professional, straightened up and said, "Hi, welcome to Kelvin's Lemonade, would you like some? It's really cold." Brad sighed like this was the most annoying thing that had ever happened to him and said, "Yeah, give me 3. Kelvin poured 3 cups, carefully lined them up, held out his little hand. "That will be $1.50, please." Brad grabbed a cup, took a loud sip, then smirked. "Put it on my tab." His friend snickered. From the garage, my hand tightened around a wrench. Kelvin did not cry, did not crumble. He just frowned and said, "We don't have tabs, the sign says 50 cents. Brad rolled his eyes all the way back into his head. "Do you know who my mom is? She runs this whole neighborhood, you should be paying me to drink this." Then he tossed the half-finished cup onto our lawn lemonade, splashing across the grass, and turned to walk away. I was about 2 seconds from marching over there when Tina's voice floated from the porch, calm, cool, razor-sharp. "Hey, Brad, you dropped something." She did not yell, she did not swear, she just said it in this tone that could stop a charging bull. He froze, glanced at the cup, glanced at his friends, muttered something, kicked the cup toward the trash, and stalked off. Kelvin stood there breathing hard, then looked at me with that insulted little businessman face. "He still did not pay," he said. I walked over, knelt down, and high-fived him. "Yeah, but you stood your ground, buddy, that matters." We laughed, but when I turned back toward the street, I saw the curtain in the Tanner living room twitch. Just a little movement, but enough. Karen had seen her golden boy get told no by my 8-year-old, and even then, before anything big happened, I felt this cold little knot form in my stomach. 2 days later, the email went out. "Friendly reminder to all residents, from the Granderson Estates HOA board signed by President Karen Tanner." Long paragraph about temporary commercial structures, references to unapproved beverage dispensaries, a 20-page attachment for an application that asked for things like soil composition and traffic impact. And of course, she CC'd the entire neighborhood. Tina read it over my shoulder and said, "So Calvin's lemonade stand is now an environmental threat, good to know." I started typing this smart-ass reply. Does a pitcher of lemonade require a hazmat team? But Tina hit delete before I could send it. Do not poke the bear yet, Jim, she said. Let her show everyone who she really is first. So we ignored it. Kelvin set out the stand again the next day. If anything, business got better. People had heard about Brad's little stunt, and now neighbors were coming by specifically to hand Kelvin $1 and say things like, "Good for you, kiddo." It felt like a quiet rebellion, the kind you only see in suburbs where buying lemonade becomes a political act. Then Karen stopped being subtle. Late afternoon on the third day, the sun was dropping just enough to throw long shadows across the driveway. Kelvin was counting his quarters, almost ready to pack up. I was near the table, helping him stack coins. Tina was on the porch with her laptop balanced on her knees. That is when I heard it. Not the soft hum of a sedan, but the aggressive growl of an engine being pushed too hard. I looked up and saw Karen's pristine white SUV swing around the corner, clip the curb, and angle straight into our driveway. It was not slowing down. It was not correcting. It was aimed at the table. Kelvin had his back to it. For a fraction of a second, my brain refused to believe what my eyes were seeing. It felt like a nightmare where you move too slow. Then everything snapped into focus. "Kelvin, move!" I screamed, already lunging. He turned just as I hit him, sending him tumbling onto the grass. The SUV hit the table a beat later. The sound of wood splintering the pitcher, shattering lemonade, spraying everywhere, the sign folding up under the bumper. It all happened in one horrible slow-motion second. The truck did not stop. It kept rolling. I slammed both hands down on the hood as hard as I could. Pain shot up my arms, my palms burned, but the sheer shock seemed to jolt her. The SUV jerked to a stop, front bumper inches from my legs. For a moment, the whole world went quiet. Kelvin started to cry, not full-on sobs yet, just these panicked little gulps, shocked that his entire business was now splinters. Tina was kneeling next to him, checking his leg, murmuring, "You are okay, you are okay." He was scraped, bruised in pain, but he was alive. The driver's door opened. Karen got out, not looking at my son, not saying a single word about almost running over a child. She pointed at the wreckage instead. "You see," she snapped, voice sharp enough to cut glass. "This is what happens when people ignore the rules. That stand was an unapproved structure. It violated Section 7, Paragraph C. This is exactly the safety hazard I warned you about. You people are a menace to this community." I just stared at her. My hands were still on the hood, shaking. "You drove your car at my kid," I said. "You came up our driveway and hit a table my 8-year-old was standing at." She rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. "If he had been where he was supposed to be on your lawn and not operating an illegal business in the driveway, we would not be having this conversation. And for the record, you hit my car. I could press charges for that." I actually laughed for a second, one of those disbelieving cracked laughs that just bursts out. That is when the sirens came. Several neighbors had already called 911. 2 police cruisers pulled up, lights flashing, neighbors quietly stepping out onto their lawns to watch. Karen flipped the switch instantly. Her posture softened. Her voice trembled. She pressed a hand to her chest. "Officer, thank goodness you are here," she said, pointing at me. "He went crazy. I was just pulling into my driveway and he ran out screaming, hitting my car." I was terrified. Meanwhile, my kid is sitting on the grass with lemonade in his hair and a shredded sign next to him. A younger officer pulled me aside for my story. An older officer walked the scene slowly, tire tracks up over my curb, splinters of the table all over our driveway. Kelvin's stool on its side, my handprints clearly stamped in dusty metal on the front of her SUV, right where someone trying to stop a moving car would hit. I told them everything, trying to keep my voice steady, but when I got to the part about shoving Kelvin out of the way, it cracked. In the end, they logged what I did as defense of others. The older cop made it clear he believed me, but he said without clear proof of intent, it would go down as a traffic incident and an insurance claim, not an assault charge. He handed me a card with a case number and said, "If new evidence shows up, call me." Then he lowered his voice and added, "People like her usually do not let things go. Document everything, Mr. Pard." Across the street, Karen stood in her driveway, watching, arms folded, expression smug. She had driven her car into my kid's stand, tried to flip the story, and walked away without a ticket. That smirk told me she thought she had won. The official war started 2 days later with a cream-colored envelope and a gold logo. It was a formal violation notice from the HOA, of course, signed by President Karen Tanner. Fines for public nuisance, unauthorized commercial activity, improper driveway use. Handwritten at the bottom in that spiky handwriting of hers, Prompt payment appreciated to avoid further penalties. I crushed the paper in my fist and threw it across the kitchen. She nearly runs over. Our son destroys his stand and now she is sending us a bill, I snapped. Tina quietly picked up the letter, smoothed it, took a picture, and slid it into a folder on her laptop. She is trying to create a record, Tina said. She wants us on file as problem residents so she has cover when she comes for us again. Let her put it in writing. The fines did not stop. One for lawn discoloration, where lemonade had spilled. One for unauthorized vehicle maintenance, because I left my hood up for an hour. Random trash appearing in neat little piles on our grass that someone could photograph and call debris. Our newspaper disappearing off the driveway before we could get it. It was like living with a petty invisible ghost that hated us. We paid none of it. Instead, Tina opened a folder she called the Karen file and started dropping everything in. Letters, photos, emails, dates. At night, she would read HOA bylaws the way other people read novels, highlighting things, muttering to herself. One night, she looked up and said, "The cameras." Granderson Estates has HOA security cameras at the entrance and by the park pointing right down the main street. The day of the SUV incident, those cameras should have caught everything. The bylaws even said residents had the right to review footage related to incidents on their property. So Tina logged into the resident portal and requested the video. A few seconds later, a bland little error message popped up, "File not found." Tina's eyes went flat in this way I have learned to be both afraid of and grateful for. She opened a different screen, the kind with black background and lines of text that look like absolute nonsense to me. "She can delete the video, but she cannot delete the server log," Tina murmured. A minute later, she pointed at the screen. There it was, an entry showing the specific file deleted by admin K. Tanner less than an hour after the cops left our driveway. Tina printed it, saved it, backed it up in 3 places. That piece of paper felt heavier than it should have. It was proof that this was not just some unhinged HOA president, it was someone actively covering up what she had done. You would think that would be the end of the crazy, right? Like, how much further can someone go over a lemonade stand? Yeah, that happened. She went further. One morning I was loading my old pickup with yard waste. Kelvin climbed into the passenger seat like he always does, making his action figures drive on the dashboard while I hauled branches. I was inside the house for maybe 3 minutes grabbing my wallet. When I came back out, a tow truck was in my driveway, yellow lights flashing. The driver had already hooked up the front of my truck. Kelvin was still buckled in his seat, eyes wide. I sprinted down the drive. "Hey, my kid is in there, what are you doing?" I yelled. The driver barely glanced at me. "Got a work order from the HOA, he said, tightening the chain. I grabbed the clipboard off the side of his truck and read it. It said, "Abandoned and inoperable vehicle. Cited some covenant about street parking, claimed the truck was a hazard." Signed, of course, by President Karen Tanner. My truck was in my own driveway running just fine. She had filed a bogus order to have my vehicle grabbed like it was junk. "You are not towing my truck off my property with my kid inside it," I said. "You do that and we are talking about kidnapping." The driver shrugged. "Look, man, I just hook and book. You got a problem, talk to your HOA. Get the kid out, I am lifting it." Something in me went very, very still. I stepped between him and the controls, held up my phone so he could see the camera on. "If you lift that truck with my son in it, I call 911 and tell them exactly that. A tow truck driver just hauled off a minor," I said. "Your company name is on the door, your plates are right there. The whole neighborhood has cameras now. You really want that smoke for whatever she is paying you." He looked at me, then at Kelvin crying in the cab, then back at me again. Whatever Karen was paying him, it was not enough for a felony charge. He cursed under his breath, stomped back, unhooked the chains, tore the work order in half, threw it on the ground, and backed out of the driveway. "Tell your crazy HOA president to lose my number," he shouted out his window as he drove away. I picked Kelvin up and he clung to me like he was 5 again. Over his shoulder across the street I saw the Tanner curtains twitch shut. She had been watching and she had used my son as a pawn in a power game. That was the day the fear turned into something else, something sharper and colder. But the lowest point, the thing that still makes my stomach knot up when I think about it, came a few days later when there was a knock on the door and a woman with a badge said, "Hi, I am with Child Protective Services." My heart just about dropped out of my body. She introduced herself as Ms. Albright, said they had received an anonymous tip about possible neglect, unsafe living conditions, and a violent, unstable father. You can probably guess who made that call. I opened my mouth to snap something, but Tina got there first like she always does. "Ms. Albright, please come in," she said, steady as a rock. "You are welcome to look around, talk to our son as long as you need. Can I get you some iced tea?" She gave this little tour, pantry full of food, Kelvin's room with books and toys, and a nightlight backyard with a swing set. Then she sat down at the table with Ms. Albright, opened the laptop and said, "Now let me give you context for that anonymous report." She showed her the doorbell footage our neighbor had shared of the SUV hitting the stand. Photos of the shattered table and my bruised hands, the stack of ridiculous fines, the fraudulent tow order with Karen's signature, the server log where Kay Tanner deleted the security footage. She explained calmly like a lawyer how every one of these things lined up with a pattern of harassment by the same woman who ran our HOA. Ms. Albright watched, and I could literally see the switch flip in her expression from possible danger in this home to these people are being targeted. She talked to Kelvin alone in the living room. We could hear him telling her about his lemonade stand and showing her his Lego spaceship. When she came back, she closed her notebook and said, "Mr. and Mrs. Pard, this tip is clearly malicious. I am closing this case as unfounded, and I will be filing a report on the misuse of our services. This is not something we take lightly." After she left, Kelvin looked up at me with these big, scared eyes and asked, "Were they going to take me away?" I hugged him so hard my arms hurt. Nobody is taking you away," I said. Over his head, Tina and I locked eyes. That was the twist for me. The moment our whole mindset shifted. Up until then, even with all the rage, we had been playing defense, just trying to survive whatever Karen threw at us. Standing there in our living room after CPS walked out, we both knew that had to change. "We have to go on offense now," I said that night. "Not just complaints, not just hoping she gets bored. We take her down or she is going to keep coming." Tina nodded. "Then we do not just fight Karen the person," she said. "We go after Karen the president. She is not a queen, she is the head of a board. That board has a treasurer." That is how we ended up talking to a quiet man named Arthur Finch, the HOA treasurer, in his front yard while he trimmed his rose bushes. Arthur looked like the last person who wanted drama in his life. Glasses, soft voice, careful movements. The second I mentioned Karen, his shoulders tensed. "She prefers that all resident issues go through her," he murmured. "Arthur, this is not a resident issue," I said. "This is about fraud, harassment, and child endangerment, and your name is on the checks." I did not yell. I just showed him things. The tow order, the fines, the deleted footage log. I asked him straight but not cruel if he really thought all of this was maintaining community standards. He looked like a man who had been holding his breath for years. Little by little it came out. Karen had been bullying the board for a long time, threatening inspections, using fines as a weapon, ordering Arthur to waive fines for friends and increase them for enemies, pushing through payments for community landscaping that sure looked a lot like her own backyard. "I kept copies," he admitted, finally, voice shaking. "Emails, the real budget reports, the invoices. I thought one day someone might need them." I handed him a flash drive. "Today is that day," I said. "Put everything on this. Drop it in a plain envelope in the library book return. No one has to know it was you, but you have a chance to stop this." He did. Tina spent nights building a presentation out of what was on that drive. Emails where Karen told Arthur exactly whose fines to erase and whose to triple, side-by-side budgets showing money quietly diverted from the HOA account to her personal vendor list records of fines that never made it into the official reports. Then she stitched that together with our own footage and logs. I called the older officer from the SUV incident and told him, "If you want to see new evidence in your case, you might want to attend the next HOA meeting." The semi-annual Granderson Estates HOA meeting is usually a snooze fest. 20 people in a room that fits 100, Karen on a little stage lecturing about trash day and hedge heights. This time, word leaked out that something big was going to happen, and the clubhouse was packed, people standing in the back leaning against walls whispering. Karen walked up to the podium, absolutely glowing, completely misunderstanding why everyone was there. She even held up a handheld decibel meter and said, "If anyone gets too loud, I will have to rule you out of order." I almost choked. After the usual speech about property values and paint colors, she opened the floor for new business. I stood up. My heart was hammering, but my voice sounded calm in my own ears. "Yeah, I have something I would like to share with the community," I said. Before she could spit out a rule, Tina hit a key at the back of the room and the projector screen behind Karen changed. First frame, Karen's own SUV turning into our driveway, high definition, captured by a neighbor's doorbell camera. The room went silent. Then people started to gasp. You could see her front tires hop the curb, the table explode, Kelvin tumble. You could see me hit the hood. Karen spun around, shouting for it to be turned off, jabbing her decibel meter at the room like that would help, but it kept rolling. Then came the slides. Emails blown up 10 feet tall where she wrote things like, "Wave Potter's fine, double Wilsons, they have been a problem." Budget sheets where community landscaping mysteriously lined up with her own property. The server log showing her deleting the security footage an hour after the cops left. The fraudulent tow order, the CPS timeline. The facts were all lined up in a way no one could ignore. People who had sat quietly for years suddenly found their voices. "You fined me $1,000 for a fence color while you were using our dues to pay for your pool service," someone shouted. "You threatened to lien my house over a basketball hoop," another neighbor yelled. Karen shrieked that everyone was out of order, tried to adjourn the meeting, waved her meter like it was a weapon, but no one sat down. And then the back doors opened and 2 police officers walked in, the same older cop and his younger partner. The older one walked straight up the aisle, straight to the front. "Karen Tanner," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Based on new evidence and multiple witness statements, you are under arrest for assault with a vehicle, tampering with evidence, fraud, and conspiracy." She went pale. For the first time since this whole thing started, she looked small. She sputtered something about misunderstanding and "for the good of the community," but the younger officer was already cuffing her hands behind her back. They walked her out past rows of neighbors holding up their phones, some angry, some just stunned. That was the moment everything flipped. The moment everyone saw what we had been living with and realized it could have been them. That night, the board held an emergency vote. Karen was removed as president. Arthur, who looked like he had finally put down a 100-pound weight he had been carrying, was named interim president. It was not some Hollywood roaring cheer, just this long, tired round of applause that sounded like relief. Months later, Tina and I sat in the front row of a courtroom while a judge read out Karen's charges and her sentence. Her lawyer had told her to plead guilty. With the video, the emails, the logs, there was no point in a trial. The judge looked at her and said very calmly that she had taken a position of trust and turned it into a weapon, that she had endangered a child over a lemonade stand, that she had tried to use the legal system and the HOA structure to crush anyone who did not obey her. Then she handed down a sentence that made it very clear Karen would be spending a long time thinking about what she had done. There was no joy in watching her break down as the bailiff led her away. Just that feeling you get when a pressure you have been living under for too long finally lets up. A little while after that, we set up another lemonade stand at the end of our driveway. This time, our retired neighbor built Kelvin a real wooden booth painted bright yellow with a solid sign. The HOA approved it in about 30 seconds. People lined up down the sidewalk. Some put $20 bills in the jar and told him to keep it. At the end of the day, he donated his first day's profit to fix the squeaky swings at the park, all on his own. Brad showed up too. He shuffled up to the stand. No entourage this time, handed Kelvin a 20 and said, "I am sorry I was a jerk." Kelvin looked at him, nodded once and said, "No tabs." They both smiled. That was enough. So that is how a 50-cent cup of lemonade turned into a full-scale war with an HOA president and ended with a courtroom sentence. I am curious what you think. Was what she got enough for what she did, or do you think the system still went easy on her because she hid behind rules for so long? Have you ever dealt with an HOA, a boss, a school, anyone who abused their little slice of power to make people's lives miserable? Tell me in the comments, argue about it, share your own story, because I promise you my family was not the first or the last to learn the hard way what happens when the wrong person is put in charge of the rule book.